Hello there.
This is where the fun begins.
Dave Filoni has a little bit of input here about Obi-Wan Kenobi's Grand Inquisitor live-action adaptation. We're gonna get right on into it. What's going on, guys? Unofficial Star Wars here. Hope you're all doing well. And in this video, as I had just mentioned, we're going to be talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi's live-action Grand Inquisitor adaptation here and what Dave Filoni has to say here with some key advice. In today's video, we're going to be taking it right here from the direct article. As per usual, I'm going to have that full article linked down in the description down below for you guys to check out fully on your own if you wish so to be. One thing that we need to get out of the gutter here, the first thing that we just need to throw out there first things first, I believe, is the fact that Dave Filoni kind of gets that final say. This is why this video is very important. This article is very important. This interview here is very important here to talk about and take a look at here, because Dave Filoni is the creator of the Grand Inquisitor. What he says pretty much kind of goes. That doesn't mean you can't have your own, of course, Star Wars nerd opinions and that type of stuff. I want to know those opinions in the comment section down below, by the way, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about this. But we're going to go ahead and let's jump right on into it on what the article has to say. As the trailers had teased, the Inquisitor had a strong presence in Disney Plus's Obi-Wan Kenobi, while Reva, the third sister, is with a complicated past, served as the primary antagonist until Darth Vader made the full weight of his presence being felt in the show. The other Jedi hunters of the Inquisitors were deeply involved in tracking down Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Grand Inquisitor in particular, especially in those first two episodes. Initially and originally appearing as the first villain in Star Wars Rebels animated series on Disney Plus, you guys can watch it right now, Rupert Friend provided the Grand Inquisitor's live-action debut for Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus. Much of the fan discourse during the build-up of the series centered around the former Jedi Temple Guard, largely a matter of continuity. The Grand Inquisitor's appearance was roasted to no end, as the character's look didn't line up at all with Paul Wiens, the alien species that he is, seen in Revenge of the Sith, with its live-action adaptation already being seen in live-action in Revenge of the Sith from 2005, when George Lucas was still in complete control here. But Rupert Friend's performance really does remove any of those distractions. I mean, he did a phenomenal job. Adapting animated entities into live-action has been a balancing act for Lucasfilm, especially in the recent, an effort that began when we saw Saw Gerrera appear in Rogue One. The effort became more difficult when the Mandoverse began to integrate Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels characters, notably Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan into The Mandalorian, and also Cad Bane in the Book of Boba Fett. Getting the details right is a matter of approach, something Dave Filoni emphasizes as Kenobi's team worked into bringing the Inquisitors into live action. Dave Filoni's influence on Inquisitor lightsabers, for one thing. The official Star Wars website released a piece of delving into the weapons of the Inquisitors in Obi-Wan Kenobi, detailing the early aspects of the creator prospects with concept art and such. It was also this advice from Dave Filoni during his early session with him and Deborah Chow that gave the prop master, Brad Elliott, a perspective on how to approach the creation of the Inquisitor's live-action lightsabers, something that's honestly really not that hard. In full quotes of what he has to say, imagine the live-action came first and then that the animated material was an exaggerated version of the live-action, ending the quote right there. And that's the perfect way to honestly put it in my own thoughts and opinions. Brad Elliott further goes on to explain that he thought that the process allowed for an easier transition from the animated weapons to physical props. Of what Brad Elliott had to say on his whole transition from animated weapons to physical props, in full quotes of that what he has to say, this gave us permission to keep the form factor of the props established in animation, but to control the proportions and to bring them more in line with props made for human hands versus animated ones, ending the quote there. Honestly, my reaction and thoughts on that is the fact that you don't really imagine a lot going into that type of stuff when it comes to making simply stuff as props such as that, of how you're going to go about with its design work and bring it from an animated form into a live action form. It doesn't really feel like that there's going to be that much change going on with it. However, it's honestly brought down to a fine science of behind the scenes, which is honestly really cool, and something I'm actually looking forward to seeing is what they have in store here for the Star Wars Disney Plus gallery of the behind the scenes that we've seen with the Book of Boba Fett and also The Mandalorian. From there, the article goes on to say how Dave Filoni guides his Padawans. Dave Filoni is definitely up there. He knows his lure, he knows his stuff, he knows his experience. He's like a second coming of George Lucas, honestly. So how does he do it? As the article goes on to say, having learned directly from George Lucas while making Star Wars The Clone Wars animated show and movie, Dave Filoni is often recognized as the hero holding the keys to the franchise at this point. The success of Clone Wars, Rebels, and the Mandoverse projects built a significant amount amount of goodwill between Filoni and the fans and all that respect that he gets, and his long vast knowledge of the things of Star Wars instilled a high degree of trust in him from his fellow live action directors, as well as they look up to him for where directions of lure and that type of stuff is really supposed to go. For one, Deborah Chow, who's the director of Obi-Wan Kenobi, has spoken highly of Dave Filoni, citing him on the person that she went to whenever she had a lure question while spearheading Obi-Wan Kenobi with directing and writing, with the series bringing in the Grand Inquisitor and the fifth brother from Star Wars Rebels into live action, involving the character's creator in discussions about their transition from live action was a natural decision. Dave Filoni created these characters of the Grand Inquisitor and the fifth brother from Star Wars Rebels, so it makes sense. Dave Filoni's guidance would have been an instrumental in any capacity, but going through the experience himself makes it for an easier task of offering words of his advice. When Ahsoka Tano was brought into The Mandalorian in live action from animated, the first thing fans saw were her white lightsabers that we saw in Star Wars Rebels. The weapon that was first introduced in Star Wars Rebels, which was an animation style and famous for its skinny lightsaber blades and drawing inspiration from Ralph McQuarrie's art, the original concept artist for the original trilogy, which in that mind, treating Ahsoka's lightsabers in live action as the basis for more stylized appearances in Star Wars Rebels makes sense, as well as her short head tails that we see in live action with The Mandalorian and now the Book of Boba Fett that we originally saw them longer in with the animated form of Star Wars Rebels. Those are things that seem to be receiving improvements for Ahsoka, which is something I do plan to cover here on the channel. Those there have actually been fixed. I'm going to be talking about that in a future separated video from this one here on the channel, so if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and join us here today. However, in my own words, it also brings up the whole idea of animated things that they're just simply not able to work with that don't necessarily make all that sense either, such as Ahsoka Tano, for example, having her longer head tails in animated form. Sure, it makes sense, it's part of the lure, it's part of the canon. However, when it comes to live action, they seem to have gotten in the way when it came to her performance scenes with using her lightsabers in duel scenes and fight scenes and that type of stuff, so they just simply made it shorter. The same thing can honestly be applied to the Grand Inquisitor, and with his large head in the animated form of Star Wars Rebels, it's a big fat lumpy head. It just is really big compared to having it in animated versus having it in live action. It makes more sense in my own thoughts and opinions, and honestly, hopefully you guys can also see it in that same light as well. Now from there, the article is just about around the corner here to wrap up here, as it says, for the limited screen time the Grand Inquisitor and the fifth brother lightsabers had, as well as their own appearances there as well, the weapons seemed faithful to their animated counterparts, making slight alterations as needed to accommodate the hand sizes of the actors had little impact on the final outcome, which was a well-constructed lightsaber that make a fine addition to our live action collection, to quote General Grievous, as the article ends right there. While this article does fixate quite a bit and focus quite a bit on live action lightsabers going from animated to the live action spectrum of things, it's really not that big. I think for anything, what they're honestly trying to get at here is the whole helicopter lightsabers. It'll probably happen someday, one of these days. We'll see it in live action, honestly, at this point, but until that day comes, I think that the main point of this article, our main takeaways, the main importance of this article is for what Dave Filoni here has to say. He's saying that it's okay, stuff changes, stuff is going to be different. Think of it as if the live action head came first before the animated series part, or the animated counterparts here for these characters and for the storytelling. And even from that, don't let these small little details of animation, or rather maybe it's live action counterparts of being brought into live action, with these small little differences actually bring it down or make this experience bad or ruin that storytelling concept. Because if that's going to get in the way of, your whole storytelling enjoyment, well, I don't know what to tell you at that point. End of the story here. However, the final line, the bottom line here, is that stuff is going to be different from its animated counterparts than its live action counterparts. As Dave Filoni says, think as if the live action had came before the exaggerated animated forms of this storytelling concepts. Guys, let me know of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I'd